All right, yeah, we need to talk about negations of compound statements. The and, or, the if then. How do we negate those? Negations of those. So we want a statement for each one of those that's opposite exactly in all cases. Okay, well, let's start with the and statement. Negation of and. So we've got our just our most basic and statement, P and Q. What does the negation of that look like? Okay, well, one way to do it is, how about a truth table? Yeah, one thing truth tables are useful for is showing things like this. What is a negation? What isn't? What's equivalent? What isn't? So let's do another truth table. And start with the and statement, P and Q. And then over here we'll try some stuff, maybe. All right. So let's look at our lines. True, 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 false, false, true, false, false. And those together. Well, true and true is true. True and false, false. False and true, false. False and false, false. Because and is only true if one of them's true. Started that over. And is true if and only if both of them are true, right? So if there's one false part, or both of them are false, and is false. Okay. Well, we might be thinking to negate and, why don't we just negate P and negate Q and do that? Well, let's try that, because if this is going to be the negation, then it's got to be exactly the opposite in all cases, right? So it'd be opposite in all these cases. False, true, true, true. Well, let's see if that works. Not P, so let's do that. False, false, true, true. Not Q is false and true and false and true. But we and those together. False and false is false, but false and true is false. False, true and false is false. True and true is true. Well, the problem with it is not exactly the opposite. This one's true, that one's false, which is opposite, but what about these? Well, in here, they're not the opposite, you see. So there's a little more to it for the and statement to negate it than just negating the components. Well, it turns out what we want to look at is this. Let's look at not P, not Q, but then what here? Or, yeah. Let's change over the or to, change the and over to the or there. Okay, so again, the not P is going to be false, true. False, false, true, true. The not Q is false, true, false, true. So we or those together now instead of anding them. Well, false or false is false, but false or true, that's true because it's or now, and one of them's true, so or is true. True or false is true, and true or true is true. And yeah, hey, how about that? Well, if you'll notice there, it's exactly the opposite in all cases. So that satisfies that legal definition of negation. So yeah, this is our negation. The negation of and, the and statement, is you do not P or, write it in words here, not Q. So to just kind of summarize that, to negate the statement and statement, we actually had to do, I guess one way you could look at 3 things. We did have to negate the first part, we negated the second part, but what else do we have to do? Changed the and to or. So to negate an and statement, you also have to change it over to an or statement, okay? All right, so that's the and statement. What about the or statement? Well, if there's any justice, how do you think we would go about negating the or statement? Well, negate P, negate Q, but what else? Change the or to and. If that, like I said, if there's any justice at all, that's the way it would work. Well, let's see. Is that the way it works? Well, let's look at our truth table here. True, 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 false, false, true, false, false. Or those together, true or true is true, true or false is true, false or true is true, and false or false is false. So the negation is going to be false, 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 true. Let's see if that is this. So negate P, negate Q, change or to and. Let's see what happens. Well, not P is false, false, true, true. Not Q is false, true, false, true. And we want to and those together. False and false is false. False and true is false. True and false is false, because they both have to be true for and to be true. True and true is true. Did it work? True, 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 false. False, 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 true. Exactly the opposite, isn't it? That is the negation. So the negation of the or statement is not P and not Q. So those are pretty nice. It's just that you have the one other fine detail, and that is if it's an or, to negate it, change it to and. If it's an and, to negate it, change it to or. But they do work there, vice versa. So to kind of do a example here. Let's see. My example might be, let's don't do that one just yet. Jerry likes steak, and his wife likes veggies. Okay. If that was my statement, Jerry likes steak and his wife likes veggies, what would be the negation, the exact opposite statement to that? Well, you negate Jerry likes steaks, that would be Jerry does not like steaks. His wife likes veggies, well, that would be his wife does not like veggies, to negate it. So that negates the components, but there's one other detail, and that is what? The and is no longer and in the negation, it is or. Yeah. Like I said, there's 3 parts. Negate the first part, negate the second part, but then you got to change the and over to or.
Why don't you switch them?
What?
Why don't you switch them?
Switch them? What do you mean, why don't I switch them?
Not like veggies.
Oh,
It's not like
okay. Why don't I switch the order? Yeah, it wouldn't matter. That'd be okay if you did, but yeah, it's not like the contrapositive where you have to flip them too. In the negations of the or, and the and statement. You just leave them in the same order. Yeah. Okay. Again, just to make it clear here, so if I had I teach math, or I go on vacation. One or the other. What would negation of that be? I do not teach math. Be the negation of teaching math. Go on vacation. I do not go on vacation. Be the negation of that. But the one other thing I need to do is change or instead of or, make it and. Yeah. So that's usually those that miss this, that's what they miss. They forget to change it over. Okay? So that's or and and. But there is one other compound statement to consider. Remember, there's one other type of, we have and compound, we have or compound, the three that we did. But there's also the if-then compound, right? So let's talk about negating it. So if we have an if, P, then Q statement. What's the negation of it? Well, turns out there's a little trickiness to it. Not quite as easy as the other two, unfortunately, of course. All right. Well, let's just go right to it. True, 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 false, false, true, false, false. If we want to look at all possible scenarios of our if-then statement, and then try to find a negation. So T arrow T is true, T arrow F is false, F arrow T is true, and F arrow F is true. So that's what we want to be doing opposite of. T, F, T, T. So we need what? F, T, F, F. Need something with F, T, F, F. Well, you might be thinking, well, why don't we just do negate P, negate Q? Well, the reason we can't just do that is because notice we'll get not P is F, F, T, T, and not Q is F, T, F, T. And when we arrow those together, what do we get? F arrow F is true. F arrow T is true. T arrow F is false, and T arrow T is true. Not the opposite. For that to be the negation, we needed F, T, F, F. Well, it's not even starting right. It starts with T. So no, just negating the P, negate the Q, and then you might be thinking, well, why don't we flip them? Well, if we negate them and then flip them, remember what that is? That's the contrapositive. And what do we know about the contrapositive to the original statement? It's equivalent. It's not opposite. It's exactly the same. So, no, it's, I'll just show you kind of here. Yeah, it turns out, here's what we're going to do. To negate this, let's look at P and not Q. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But let's look at P and not Q, that together, and see what happens. All right, so P is TTFF, and not Q is FTFT, opposite of the Q. So if I and, now that's an and, so I and those together, T and F is false. T and T is true. F and F is false, and F and T is false. What about it? Is it an opposite? Got a T first, got an F first there. We got an F second, T second there. T here and T there, F there, F. Yep, it's the opposite. So what statement negated it? That one right there. P and not Q. Let's talk about that. A couple little things on that. The negation of if P then Q, turns out it's an and statement, right? I've got if P then Q, the negation of it's an and statement. So that's the first thing right off the bat. The second thing is, notice I did not negate both parts. Only the second part is negated, isn't it? P there, it's P there. It's not negated. Only the Q is negated. So there's a couple little quirks about negating an if-then statement. Here's the way we might, so to negate an if-then, if P then Q statement, change the if-then to and. So in other words, we wipe out if and then and change it to an and. Also, leave the first part alone and negate just the second part. Leave the first part as is, but negate the second part. Kind of a word description of it. So we change if then to and then we negate the first, only the second part. Leave the first part as is. For example, if it is broke, then I will fix it. If it is broke, then I fix it. Negation of that goes like this. To negate that, I wipe out if then altogether and make it and. So if's not in there, then's not in there anymore to negate it. Change it all over to and. Then the first part, what do I do to it? Not a thing. It stays, it is broke. So it is broke, and I negate the second part. I do not fix it. That's the negation of my original if-then statement. A little tricky, huh? A little bit tricky. But that's the way it works. And if you think about it, it does make sense that that's the negation, because this says if it's broke, I'm going to fix it. Doesn't that say exact opposite? That says if it is broke, that says it is broke and I don't fix it. That's the opposite. That is opposite, isn't it? If it is broke, I'll fix it. It is broke and I don't fix it. So that is opposite statement of it. Okay? So a couple more here just to give us another practice. Is that okay? All right. Okay, so negate this. I play the banjo. And I cannot dance. Not really talking about myself personally, but maybe I am. Okay. I can't play the banjo, but anyway, all right. I want to know the negation of that. Well, this is just an and statement, and it's pretty easy. To negate and, you just negate the parts, and what else? Change, what else? Change and to or. Okay, so I do not play the banjo. That negates that. Oh, and then I cannot dance. How would I negate it? Well, it's already negated, so I take the negative out, if you will, right? To negate it, the old double negative. So what would be the negation of I cannot dance? I can dance. I can dance will be the last part. But then the one other thing is change the or, change the or, change the and over to or. Okay? If I go to college, then I will be knowledgeable. If I go to college, then I will be knowledgeable. What's the negation of that? Okay, now the if one is the strange one, I guess we might put it that way. If it's and you negate it, that's easy. You just negate it, but change the and to or. If it's or, negate it, but change the or to and. If then is different. To negate it, to negate the if then, you take if then all the way out. And it changes over to and. So I don't have if, I don't have then at all in my statement. It's an and statement now. To negate if then, you change it to and. And then the other bit of it is I don't actually negate both parts. Which part do I negate? Just negate the second part. So this part stays as is. I go to college and I will not be knowledgeable. So I do negate this part. All right. So hopefully that'll give you a little bit to go on. But the if then is the one that's different about it. Negation. Okay?